It's 5 years after about 197 countries adopted the Paris Agreement. That agreement aimed at reducing global greenhouse emissions and limit global temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius, while pursuing to limit the increase further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Today, let's take a look at how far countries, including Nigeria, has gone in lowering carbon emission. A number of people might not even understand what we're talking about here.
Thank you. It'd be interesting to hear from the experts
Most
how Nigeria is doing.
Most certainly, especially, I don't even get me started. Professor Chukwumerije Okereke is a professor of environment and development, as well as Paul Abolo, president, Ecologistics Integrated Services. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Let me begin with you, Professor Okereke. Perhaps there is a need for us to understand what are we talking about here, because many people are wondering carbon emissions, reduced temperature. Please break it down. What does it mean, really?
I like your fundamental question, because we need to carry the public along. What we are saying here is that decades of pursuing economic growth has led to the pumping up into the atmosphere of certain gases that we generally call greenhouse gases. Now, methane is a major greenhouse gas, and there are others. But the major or the most important greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is generated as a result of many industrial activities, such as when you're driving your car, when you're cooking, when you are producing oil, etc. Now, the physics is that when carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions are pumped into the atmosphere, they have the ability to trap heat. And when they trap heat for a long period of time, this now results in increase in global atmospheric temperature. An increase in atmospheric temperature for over a long period of that time causes various changes in weather, and these negative changes in weather is what we are calling climate change.
Well, I hope
we understand better now, don't we?
But that is just the first step, because some are wondering, I mean, when you're flying at very, very, high levels in the atmosphere, it's very cold up there and very, hot on the surface, as Professor Okereke has said. Mr. Abolo, how do you help us break it down even further? Because a good number of people are wondering, okay, so I understand that it's about general temperature, but what's it got to do with me? How do I contribute to it, or how do I make it better or worse?
First of all,
please.
The rate of precipitation, rainfall.
Mr. Abolo, please.
Mr. Abolo, can you hear us?
Okay. A little noisy on his environment, but let's go back to Prof. So I guess you can take it now, because the question then would be, how do people, consume the information that, look, I am contributing to climate change in a good way or in a bad way? What are the intervention activities of people? What do they need to do to make things better in the climate or to make things worse? Because the earlier we learn about it, the better. Our environment is already hot, so what can be worse?
Very good. The ways that people contribute to climate change are many. Number one, when you are driving your car, rather than, for example, taking a walk where you possibly can, by driving your car, you are contributing to climate change because the fuel that you're burning is releasing a lot of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, and other greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. Number two, when you are cutting down trees and not planting to replace the trees that you've cut, you are contributing to climate change because trees have the ability to absorb, or what we call to sequester, carbon from the atmosphere. Number three, when you are eating a lot of cow, and I'm not saying people should not eat cow, but when you're eating a lot of cow, you are contributing to climate change because cows release a lot of methane through their back, but also consume a lot of vegetation. So it is better to eat less of cow and even perhaps to be a vegetarian and eat more of fish. When you're flying about, some people fly to Dubai to have birthday parties, such activities are contributing to climate change. And I can go on and on. Any activity that results in the release of carbon dioxide, when you are using your air condition in your office, when you can actually just open the window and use natural light, you are contributing to climate change. The biggest sources of climate change or carbon dioxide emission or greenhouse gas emission are single point pollutions, like when we are flaring gas in the Niger Delta, or the process of refining oil, or the process of cement production, or paper production. So industrial activities are the single biggest source. That is why there is a strong relationship between industrial development and climate change. However, any little thing helps. So there are causes that are happening at individual level, as I have already indicated, but the big causes are happening at industrial scale. But we are saying at the UN IPCC, or global scientific body, that everyone should take a little bit of responsibility, because it's only in that way that we can deal with the problem. And by the way, there is another big question that you asked: how does it concern me? So far, we have dealt at how it concerns me from the point of contribution, but I think we also need to focus on how it concerns me from the dimension of impact. So whether it's flooding, whether it is drought, all of these, whether it's excessive heat, all of these things are now beginning to have huge impact on the lives of people in Lagos and other parts of Nigeria, as well as all over the world.
Dr. Abolo, I hope you can hear us now. Before we continue this discussion,
I can hear you very well.
Yes, let me just take it all the way back. What exactly does this Paris Agreement say?
Beautiful. Thank you, Alero, for having me. It's nice to see you again. Yes, let's break down the Paris Agreement a little bit. The Paris Agreement is a landmark agreement that was made for climate action. And one of the major things that we have in the Paris Agreement is the incentives that it provides for developing countries to mitigate and to adapt to impacts of climate change. So apparently, there is an arrangement where developing countries receive funding and technology support to be able to skew their infrastructural development to climate-resistant approaches, and to also be able to adapt to the impacts of climate change, such as flooding, such as desertification, erosion, and all the stuff we have. Let's bring it back home to Nigeria as a developing country. We need to be exact and do some assessment 5 years after to know exactly where we are as a nation and how we have been able to key into the provisions of the Paris Agreement to develop our infrastructure, to build our economy, and all of that. There is a huge gap in that sector. And when I was discussing with Ayola earlier, she's told me that we need to come up with a scorecard on how Nigeria has fared within these last 5 years. If you allow me, I brought a report card here where I can give you a brief report on how Nigeria has fared. At the beginning of this program, you talked about awareness, how many people know what is climate change. We did a program and we stopped on the streets and we asked a couple of people, what do they know about climate change? And 95% of them, especially youths, don't know what is climate change. So that's a huge failure. So in terms of awareness, Nigeria has scored F in climate change. In terms of sensitization, Nigeria has scored F, failed in climate change. In terms of participation, Nigeria can get a D for that because we attend events, but I'm not seeing any impact. In terms of climate finance, we have an F in climate finance. I can break that down if we have the time for you. In terms of capacity for assessing climate finance and the technology that is involved, we have scored an F 5 years after. In terms of having private sector engagement in climate action, because part of what we have in the Paris Agreement is to leverage private sector funds to attract climate change funds. We have scored another F there. And then in terms of attendance, sure, we have a D there because we attend programs and the rest of them, but are there impacts? No, highly insignificant. So I will quickly give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's look at the Green Climate Funds, for example, which is the greatest funder for climate change. We'll look at a few countries: Nigeria, Ethiopia, Morocco, South Africa, Kenya, and Rwanda. Nigeria, with a population of 200 million plus, has only been able to access 173 million of the GCF fund, as against Ethiopia with 110 population that has accessed 233 million. Morocco, with a population of 36, has accessed 227 million, while Rwanda, with a population of 13 million, has accessed 51 million. So what does that tell you? What that tells us is that for every person in Nigeria who is impacted by climate change, flooding, desertification, we are losing our land by 0.6 kilometers every year, erosion, and people are losing their farms, and the rest of the people are displaced. And upon that, climate change has contributed to our security challenges in the country. But what the report is showing is that only 86 cents has been attracted for an individual, compared to $2.11 for a country like Ethiopia, $6.30 per person for a country like Morocco. Look at Rwanda. Rwanda has 3.9 per person. So if you compare this to our GDP, you will see that Nigeria is lagging behind compared to the size of our GDP by 76%. If you compare this to an average...
I wouldn't call that lagging behind, because there's only one D in all of the results that you have listed out.
What we call F level.
I don't even know where to begin. But so my question here then is, we have agencies, Dr. Abolo, that are supposed to be addressing these issues. There's the meteorological agency. There is a number of others. There's a number of agencies. One of them is always talking about the quantum of rain that we're going to have, the quantum of flooding, and yes, there's NIMET, and then there's another agency. I forgot their name right now. We engaged the prof there as DG a few times. Question then is, what are they doing? What should they be doing that they have not been doing? Because from the stats, from the results that you have reeled out, it is clear that we aren't giving enough attention because we don't have significant awareness. So what should these agencies have done that they have not done, for which reason we are at such a low, deplorable, palpable level in climate change?
So let me tell you something. If you read through the Paris Agreement, you will see that it goes beyond the agencies. It's supposed to be a national direction. It has to be a deliberate action on a national level. The subnational entities are included in the Paris Agreement, and I can bet you that so many of our subnational entities are not even aware of what the NDC is. Of course, the NDC, if you don't know, is the strategy document that was submitted by Nigeria on how they are going to engage in climate action. In that strategy document, we listed 6 major sectors: agric, forest, energy, transportation and communication, industry and commerce, and then we added vulnerable groups. So in all of these sectors, you'll find that if we take these sectors and then impute these sectors in our development plan on the national and subnational level, then you will begin to create the awareness. It's not just enough to have a conference or announce that this is what the weather will be. No, it needs to penetrate, it needs to go into the academia. We need to be on channels a lot of time to talk about this, and then the right people needs to be engaged in terms of consultants and experts who really know how to engage climate finance and technology support so that we will be able to do what we need. We, as a nation, needs to skew our infrastructure development to become climate resilient so that we can leverage the funds that we are putting into infrastructure to attract climate finance. We are in recession. The only way to do this now, if you look at the models that Rwanda and the rest of them are doing, is to change our development pattern, to bring in climate resilient approaches and go greener so that we can attract these funds. So in terms of awareness, awareness needs to start at a very low level in the schools. The young ones need to know what climate change is, what global warming is. They need to know how it affects them, and they need to know how they contribute, like the professor said, how they contribute to these issues. So that is one. That is why we scored an F in awareness. In sensitization, the sensitization is fairly okay with you tell people about what the weather situations are going to be, but do you distill it down to how it affects the rural farmer? Do you distill it down to how it affects the man who is pumping gas into the atmosphere with his I better pass my neighbor generator? Do you distill it down to corporate organizations that are running giant generators and they're polluting the environment? No. There's no awareness, there's no connection. So there's a link that is broken that we need to fix, where we need to link whatever we are doing to our developmental planning and budgets as well, and then take it back to the strategies that we are listed in the NDCs. And then if I would like to tell you,
just one moment, just before you go to that one, Dr. Abolo, you've given us a whole chunk to chew on for a bit, but maybe we chew on that for a little bit and take this break. When we return, you can give us a little more to chew on. Do stay with us. All right, so let's go back to Professor Chukwuemeka Okereke on this one. Well, you have heard Dr. Abolo about this same matter, and most certainly, I can almost imagine how you feel about that report sheet, as we call it, you know, in school, the scorecard that he has reeled out of us. At what point did we miss it?
Well, thank you very much. I listened carefully to Doctor's assessment. I'm afraid I would like to be slightly more charitable to the federal government. I think that Nigeria has done quite a lot in responding to climate change since the Paris Agreement is signed. Number one, as Doctor was saying, the most important way that a nation should respond is to come up with a plan, a strategy, document. Nigeria responded very quickly in crafting its own nationally determined contribution. Not only that, our NDC is actually quite ambitious, promising 20% emission reduction without international support, and 45% if we received international support. Nigeria has also elaborated a lot of sectoral plans to enable it actually put the NDC into use. I am aware also that Nigeria has tried to engage the youth. I am particularly impressed by the effort that has been made by the Honorable Minister of Environment and the Minister of State for the Environment, Mrs. Or Chief Sharon Ikazo, to engage the youth. I have spoken in a number of different fora organized by Nigerian youth seeking to sensitize Nigerians about climate change. And I also know that Nigeria has implemented the RED Plus program run by the Minister of Environment under Mr. Salisu. So there's quite a lot Nigeria has done and a lot of engagement from the private sector. However, I will agree with the doctor that there is a little bit more to be done. One of the points that he made, which I am particularly in agreement with, is the need to stop seeing climate change as something that one small agency somewhere can tackle. Doctor made a lot of references to Rwanda. But actually, I was the one that led the designing of the first national green growth policy in Africa, which was in Rwanda, with my team at the University of Oxford in 2009. And I am fully aware, with all sense of humility, that the support I received from the government of Rwanda, from the level of the presidency, President Kagame, who said to me, call any of my ministers any day, and if they don't answer you, let me know. He gave me an office very close to his own presidential office, and I operated from there for almost 9 months when we were working with up to 11 ministers to design the national strategy for Rwanda. And so Doctor is right. This is not something for Meteorological Agency or even for the Minister of Environment, although they are doing their best. We need to create a national institution. Remember that just a few weeks ago, President-elect Joe Biden, in seeking to assure the world of his commitment to tackle climate change, appointed Senator John Kerry as the U.S. envoy on climate change. This is a statement of understanding and ambition. So we need to have a lot of support and involvement at the presidential level, at the very, very highest level. Because as Doctor was saying to you, and as I also already said to you, climate change is not an environmental issue. When you are driving, you are contributing to climate change. So this is a transportational issue, a transportation issue. When you are using a Pass My Neighbor generator, you are contributing to climate change. This is a power issue. When you are deforesting, you are contributing to climate change. This is an agricultural issue. And on I can go. When we are burning gas, we are contributing to climate change. This is an oil and gas issue. And so we need a national green growth strategy that is backed by the federal government, backed by the presidency. We probably even need an envoy on climate change or a national agency that will bring together all these ministries and come together with a solid plan that can help us to put our NDC in use. That is where we are lagging behind mostly.
But Prof, to follow up on that, I don't know if you would also agree with him, because from what you have said, if we have limited all of the interventions or conversations about, climate change to just, the Meteorological Agency or the one that I was trying to remember the other time, Hydrological Society, if we have limited all climate change issues to those ones without integrating them into those other agencies or ministries, departments, and agencies that you have mentioned, then how much do you differ from what Dr. Abolo had said earlier? How the level of our failure or inactivity, generally?
I felt that we should acknowledge the effort that has been made by the Ministry of Environment, and I gave you quite a lot of, and I can go a lot more, to provide example of where I think they are strong. But I've also agreed with Doctor on where I think that they are weak. Where we are weak at the moment is the lack of integration, is the absence of a national green growth plan, is ensuring that conversation is taking place with the Ministry of Transport, with the Ministry of Power, with the Ministry of Agriculture, so that we can come up with an integrated plan that can enable us to embed green growth transition across all the ministries and sectors. We need a green growth plan. That's what I did in Rwanda. That's what Nigeria needs now. But Doctor is right also that we need to scale up our effort on engagement, on sensitization. I agree with him that the scorecard may well be low in that area. But I also want to pay tribute to some of my colleagues and friends and mentees who are doing their best at the youth level to sensitize our people about the dangers of climate change and how Nigeria can take its rightful position in the Committee of Nations in crafting a response.
Dr. Abolo, I gathered from what you both have said that a major part of our emissions are coming from the industrial sector. I would like you to talk a bit about what the regulatory bodies are doing to improve on that which these industries are doing.
Thank you very much, Alero. Yes, I'm going to touch on that, and you can also find that if you're talking about regulatory and the rest of it, quickly, if we look at the ERGP that was designed in 2017, a year after the president, our president made a very beautiful speech in Morocco at COP22, you will find that the ERGP only talked about climate change in the context of green bonds and green Great Wall, which is also aimed at addressing desertification. However, if you look at the economic sustainability plan that was just released, no mention of climate change is there. So if you're talking about policy, what we need to do, these things need to be enshrined in national and subnational documents. So, for example, you're driving on the road, possibly going to channels, you're driving behind a big truck, you see all the pollution going on. I don't see any regulation to address that. You see the big corporate bodies running emission into the air. Let me tell you, the currency for climate change is emission. So what they are putting into that environment is money. It's costing you and I our health, it's costing us security, it's costing our agriculture, it's costing a whole lot of stuff. Nobody ever asks anybody what you're doing. There are no regulations, you know. It's a show of power that you're running your big generators. And so in terms of policy, there's a whole lot that needs to be done. But the area I really need us to look at, and I want us to go back to that, if you take time and look at the speech that was delivered at COP22 in Paris by the president, there lies our issue. The speech is very beautiful. Everything is just for the nation to take that speech and implement every line of what was said in that. It's a master class. It's not done. Well, I agree with the professor that a lot has been done. Sure, I'm a part of that. I'm a part of the Green Bond, a part of the UN Red Plus and the rest of it. But we must not lose the facts in the narratives. The reality is this. You cannot confuse movement for progress. Sure, we've made a lot of movement. What are the outcomes? The outcomes are insignificant. So we need to make the movement in the right direction so that we can make credible outcomes. Outcomes in terms of our economy, outcomes in terms of our health, outcomes in terms of our security challenges. The Heather Farmer crisis, what is it all about? It's about climate change. There's not enough land for grazing. That is the principal thing. So we need to look at the things from the real context with which it impacts on our lives and livelihoods and on our security and as our unity as a nation. Yeah. Climate change is dealing a big blow to us. We must deal with climate change.
Yeah, just one moment, Dr. Abolo. So now we know we need to do it, and you have reeled out some of the things that the president has said. What are the critical steps we need to take now so that we can address these issues, and what are the consequences if we don't act now?
Well, the consequences, if we don't act now, is that it's been projected that between this year and 2015, if nothing is done, we are going to have a GDP reduction from 6 to 32% between now and 2050. So that's crazy, that's critical. We need to do something now. But in terms of what we need to do, let's look at the report again. And the report also made some recommendations. In terms of sensitization, the report said we need to focus on the youths because our population is a heavily youth-laden one. Two, the youths live in the virtual environment. So once we engage the youths at the appropriate level, we will find that it becomes a part of the narratives for the youth. And once you get climate change to become a part of the narratives for the youth, you will find that you will create the desired impact in terms of sensitization and awareness. So that's one of the things we need to do. In terms of participation, sure, we scored a D there. We are doing fairly all right. But we need to open up the global conferences on climate change. By now, we ought to have to be in Glasgow, if not for COVID, and allow a more private sector participation. You go to these events, you hardly see any of our private sectors participating. So how do they engage? How do they know what climate change is? How do they know what the opportunities climate change presents for their business? It's not there. And I'll just tell you one more without having to waste your time. We need to build on capacity. We need to build on the capacity of our youths, for our graduates to be able to assess climate finance. We need to build on their capacity for technology and innovation to be keyed in and allied to climate finance. So these are some of the basic things we need to do. And once we get this done in the next 1 year, I bet you the scorecard will be different.
All right, Dr. Abolo, thank you for that one. Prof, we have just about 45 seconds to go. At the strategy level, at the integration level, what is critical for us to do?
Well, as I indicated before, we need to design a national green growth plan. That national green growth plan will bring all the key ministries together and embed or have a look. There was a former president of the US that says that planning sometimes can be more important than the plan. We need to bring the key sectors into one
opinion, Prof. Just one moment. In your opinion, who should be taking the lead in coming up with this document that you're talking about?
It has to be the Federal Minister of Environment, but also remember that some of us have argued for a National Commission on Climate Change. There's been a climate change bill that was sent. It was almost assented to by the former president, but he didn't. And that bill was resubmitted. I really don't know what it is now. But we really need to be thinking about a National Climate Change Commission that will help to bring all the various sectors together. But in the absence of that, it has to be the Ministry of Environment that should take the leadership. But by the way, I want to also stress the fact that the National Sustainability Plan, which Dr. Abolo spoke about, has some quite good things about climate change. Remember, there is a commitment to put nearly, I think, 5 million homes on solar panel, but also a mass agricultural project that will replant several hundred thousands of millions of trees.
So that's good to know, yes. Well, we have to thank you very much, gentlemen, because we have run completely out of time for this segment, but we have to be very, very grateful to you for your perspectives and hope that your recommendations will facilitate speedy action so that our scorecard can greatly improve. Professor Chukwumerije Okereke is Professor of the Environment and Development. Thank you so much for your time. He joined us from Oxford in the UK, as well as Dr. Abolo, President, Ecologistics Integrated Services. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. We're back in a moment for another conversation. Do stay with us.